Why didn't I cut my hair sooner? Short curly hair is where it's at. This is truly a beginner-friendly tutorial on how to cut your curly hair from long to short at home by yourself, on yourself. No, you do not need to be a professional to know how to do this. Sis, I got you. And for those of you who may ask, because I know somebody's gonna ask, yes, I did come out with a haircut video not too long ago, but the way I cut my hair when I'm chopping off a lot of length is quite a bit different than when I'm cutting it into long layers. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. For this DIY curl cut, you're going to need a pair of hair cutting shears or scissors. Please don't use regular scissors. They aren't sharp enough and can cause split ends. Next, you're going to need a rat tail comb. Although you won't need it to comb through your hair, it's going to be essential for creating precise parts, giving us a more even haircut. And lastly, grab a couple of hair ties to use for the first portion of the haircut. Now that we've gathered all our supplies, we're ready to get to chopping. I'm starting on 4-day-old wash and go curls styled with a light leave-in plus some flaxseed gel. For my final hurrah with long hair, I decided to measure how long it got. Now, I never usually do this, but I wanted to see how much I cut off in comparison with the length I started with, and my curls were around 21 inches long unstretched, and stretched it was around 25.5 inches. And when my hair was straight, it was tailbone length on the verge of grazing my butt, which was no bueno for me. For my big chop, I'm putting my hair into 2 ponytails. Now, your hair needs to be evenly divided for an even cut, so part it as straight down the middle as you possibly can. It's important not to pull or stretch the curls too much. Just gently tie it to the length that you want and take your time. Next, tie the other side to match and take a moment to stop and check that each side is even before you cut. Cutting your hair with it in the front is going to create a rounded shape in the back. If you want it blunt, you're going to need someone to help you tie it in the back and cut it that way. Now, it also doesn't hurt to double check how much you want to cut. If you simply want to cut less, pull the hair tie a bit lower. If you want to cut more, put it a little bit higher. Originally, I was debating as to whether I should cut my hair above or below the hair tie, but for some extra wiggle room for the layers I'm adding in later, I decided to cut under it. If you're as nervous as I was, give yourself a moment. Even though I wanted to cut my hair a lot shorter for a long time, I was procrastinating on doing it because cutting a good amount of hair off can be really scary, especially when you're used to your hair being a certain length. I'm no stranger to having shorter hair. I've cut it to this length and shorter many times, but I'd say 90% of the time I had long hair. Because of that, it kind of became a part of my identity in a way. I was reading something the other day about how hair holds onto energy, and when we experience an energy shift or change, this is part of why we get the desire to cut our hair. It helps us to release that old energy and move on to the new. And because I'm a big ol' hippie, I just soaked all that information up and I was like, yeah, I gotta do it. Anyway, it took me a minute to figure out if I was happy with the length of my curls. After observing it for a while, I decided, hey, I'm happy with this. I totally didn't realize the faces I was making while cutting my hair off, but obviously I was going through a wide range of emotions. It's a little bit weird though, because once I cut my hair off, I thought I was gonna miss it, but in reality, I just felt a big sense of relief. Using my rat tail comb, I parted my bang area, which is from my temples, curved back into where the comb begins to lift off from my scalp. Now, I don't want to cut this too short. First, I'm gonna go in with a light trim, pulling both sides forward. Then I pull the hair across my face to the opposite side to create subtle curtain bangs. This makes my face framing layers slightly shorter in the middle and longer on the sides. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but this haircut works best by cutting the length completely dry to account for shrinkage. It's gonna give us a clearer picture of what the length will look like at the end of our DIY curl cut. To create more volume in my curls, I'm adding layers. So I'm only adding it to the crown area, sectioning off that area, starting at my temples, going back. And once you section yours off, it should have a horseshoe kind of U shape. Using the face framing layers as my guide, I'm using my pointer and middle finger to tightly pinch my hair and pull it straight up. Pulling the hair up creates volume by making the center layers, the section of the hair that travels the least to get to that point, shorter than the outer layers, the section of hair that travels the most to get to that same point. Since I could feel where my guide/bang section was ending in comparison to the rest of my hair, that's how I know where to stop and cut. Cutting it in this way allows the layers hairs to be shorter on the inside and longer on the outside. Once I pulled all my hair forward, you could see that it created soft layers without thinning out the look of my hair. And I think for that section, I cut maybe about 2 inches. After cutting the layers, you're gonna want to blend them to ensure they aren't choppy and flow seamlessly from top to bottom. Keep your head level and pull your hair straight out to the side, and wherever you see a jagged line, cut it into a blunt, solid line. I did this in 4 large sections, but you could do more if you'd like to be more thorough. I did a very detailed explanation with my long layered curl cut video if you guys want more details on that, but essentially the gist of it is to use your pointer and middle finger to stretch your hair evenly to the side to see where you need to cut it. The more practice you get, the easier this part becomes, and afterwards I double checked the shape to make sure I was happy with it. Now we're on to the final step of this haircut. After washing and restyling my hair into a wash and go, this is how the back and front look. Because it was cut in a dry, curly state, there are a few stragglers left behind that need to be cleaned up, and this is where another dry curl cut comes into play, but it's more of a curl by curl technique. I'm moving my hair around without pulling it too hard to see where my curls are naturally laying before I cut anything, and there's an extra long hair there, so I cut that off. I'm cutting any hair that hangs out of the shape in the back, bringing that to the front and cutting it, and I'd recommend that you focus on cutting less than you think you need. The way I measured how much I needed to cut was by counting how many times my curls looped hanging outside of the shape I wanted. I ended up cutting half a loop to a full curl loop depending on the section. I hope I explained what I'm doing clearly. Before I did the dry cut, here's how the back looked, and here's after. You could see a soft U shape forming, shorter curls towards the front and longer curls in the back. I was gonna cut more, but I stopped myself. I'm gonna wait maybe a month or so because I'm thinking I want to go a little bit shorter, but that's not for certain yet. I might just stick with this length. To be completely honest, I've been wanting to cut my hair short since like early last year, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I don't know, maybe I was scared or something. I didn't know what it was, but I'm so glad that I finally decided to go for it. If you want to cut your hair, just cut it. And my hair just looks so much more full and it has just like slightly more volume. I'm realistic. I know my hair is fine. I'm just happy with, you know, a little bit more for what it looks like on my curls. But for me, I'm thinking I want to keep it like this for like the rest of the year because styling it took 20 minutes, which is crazy. Usually styling takes a really long time for me and dry time. That's part of why I wanted to cut my hair shorter, because I just wanted to free up a little bit more time and energy to focus on other things other than my hair. If you guys found this video helpful, it would mean a lot if you share it with some friends and family, and go ahead and subscribe for more videos from me, and I'll see you next time. Well. Hello my loves, today I'm sharing some of my self-care and beauty maintenance routines I do to look and feel my very best. I'll be covering the natural hair care routine I do once a month, weekly skincare routine, daily self-care, and more. And what's even better about all of these routines is that they can be easily done at home. My daily self-care routine begins first thing in the morning with oral hygiene, and oil pulling is an Ayurvedic practice that helps to naturally whiten teeth, it freshens breath, reduces inflammation, and it helps prevent cavities. So I do this for 15 minutes while I put on my workout clothes and I make my cucumber and lime water to drink with my supplements. Usually I cut up cucumbers in the fridge to easily add it to my